Well, it's a wonderful thing to be here tonight with you all, friends and colleagues, and some I don't yet know. And I'm under strict instructions not to speak German. So I will try to avoid any German words, bearing in mind also that this lecture is being recorded, possibly to be viewed by others who are not here this evening, who would prefer it in English. So it's a very kind invitation from the organizers, whom I thank herewith. I'll just say one word of explanation in advance. I'm going to be using the PowerPoint illustrations, but they don't always precisely fit with the text. So I'm going to invite you to do multitasking. If you are stuck on what I say, look at the latest picture and think about that, and vice versa. But it should work out more or less. Well, when university courses in the study of religions are designed, it's usually taken for granted that there has to be an element in the syllabus which introduces students to questions of theory and method. So the famous figures, or a selection of them, are reviewed in turn, whether in lectures or seminars. And this approach is reflected in textbooks such as the German, Klassiker der Religionswissenschaft, classics of the study of religions. And there the living introduce the dead, although some more have now died, I'm sorry to say. So we do a little bit of ancestor veneration. In fact, it turns out that a majority of those treated turn out to be classical figures in other disciplines such as theology, sociology, anthropology, or psychology. You know who they are. Well, I have often been a little uneasy about the phrase theory and method, or in German, Theorie und Methodik, because it seems to put theory first. True, it's euphonic, it sounds good, it trips off the tongue, theory and method, easy to say. But does this phraseology not mislead students into thinking that first we get theories from somewhere, usually from very famous people, and then we learn about methods, and finally we go and study the religions themselves armed with our theories and methods? You've all seen what this picture is now, haven't you? There'll be some more of those. This is my outline, and I'm still on section 1. My main argument today is that it's more appropriate to think in terms of a sequence: methods, studies, theories. Not least when it comes to the study of religions, Religionswissenschaft. In this sequence, the studies themselves are central: methods, studies, theories. Only through studying something does it become really possible to theorize about it. And this does not contradict the spiral interdependence of research, theory, research, and further theory. However, I have little time for those armchair methodologists and theorists who tell us how to do our job. Most of them live in North America, without ever having tried to do it themselves. I think you know who they are. I admit that it's not quite easy to send students into the field or a field immediately. For one thing, they probably do not yet have the linguistic tools, and they might cause poor public relations in the immediate neighborhood, and then we would get into trouble with the believers. Nevertheless, what we should introduce them to is not theory and method, but method and theory. And I'd like to suggest a German expression for this: Religionswissenschaftliche Methodik und Theoriebildung. Next time you plan your modules, please try to incorporate that expression. A particular danger in adopting theories from disciplines external to our own, however stimulating that may be, is that such theories often strive to be unitary. And unitary theories can easily blind observers to the multiplicity of the phenomena in our field. It is normal for scientific inquiry to seek a unitary theory. But quasi-theological theories of religion, such as Rudolf Otto's view of religious experience, have been rightly rejected as being too demandingly inclusive. In fact, as we all know, the numinous is not central to every kind of religious experience. Even in Otto's own day, the idea of multiplicity was already current through William James' account even of the mainly Western varieties of religious experience. It was also contradicted by the wide range of articles displayed in the Museum of Religions which Otto himself founded, the Religionswissenschaft in Marburg. But if we reject the idea of the numinous as a single theory of religion, we did that long ago, of course, I know, should we not be equally cautious about more recent unitary theories emanating from imperialist disciplines such as philosophical sociology or cognitive science? They're supposed to laugh there. Thank you. It is quite correct that in the search for scientific knowledge, we do need to push for theoretical coherence in any given field. We must try to develop appropriate theory. So what I'm interested in is digging for theory in the very ground of the field under study. And the results of such digging may at first seem fragmentary, and yet the fragments may lead us further than we first expect. Now, we're not getting religious theories out of religion. That's what Rudolf Otto did. We are looking for theories of religion. What I mean is that we should allow the exploration of the phenomena to work suggestively and to provide building blocks for the development of relevant theory. This votive tablet is from a Buddhist temple, but I must move on. There are many traps in the study of Japanese religions, especially when it comes to the choice of leading concepts for analysis. For example, the so-called new religions and new religions are often presented without reference to theory. The term new religions, Shinshin Shukyo, is nothing more. I didn't promise not to use any Japanese words, did I? Shinshin Shukyo, new religions, is nothing more than an arbitrary chronological designation derived from journalism. It is completely devoid of theoretical value. Another problem is that much recent argument about the history of Japanese religions has scorned the very term religion, while replacing one oversimplification with another. For example, a recent work states boldly, I quote, "There were no Japanese religions before the mid-19th century." Shall I repeat that? There were no Japanese religions before the mid-19th century. When I read this recently, it made me feel quite weak and giddy. If it were really so, it would be a lot easier for me to finish writing the history of Japanese religions for the series Religionen der Menschheit. Anyway, to illustrate how digging for theory works in the context of Japanese religions, I want first to introduce 3 examples of materials in the field. And then I'll move forward to an overall theory of contemporary Japanese religion, simple, as it seems to me, ultimately inescapable. And since I've been working at these materials for a long time in the field, I admit that I do already know where I'm heading. Today, I'm trying to illustrate the sequence from field to theory. The same process could work analogously, I believe, and those who work in other fields might like to think about this. They could work analogously, mutatis mutandis, in parallel but different cultures. China, India, Korea, Indonesia, the Americas, the Africas, etc. And indeed, it is desirable for similar theoretical concepts to emerge in correlation. So I come to my first examples, which I came across just this summer. One day, earlier this year, during an early morning bicycle journey with my wife, I came across a little Jizo shrine tucked into a shed in the street. And this particular Jizo shrine, the Jizo is inside, you'll see him later, has a special feature which I will come to in a minute. Now, as some of you are no doubt quite aware, the roadside shrines containing small stone figures of Jizo or Jizo-sama are a very well-known phenomenon in Kyoto and some other parts of Western Japan. Jizo was originally conceived as a Buddhist bodhisattva, and as such, he is believed to save people from the hells they might otherwise fall into. Because of this, his image will be found quite often near the entrance of cemeteries. In Kyoto, however, the Jizo also function as a guardian deity for the smallest units of local community, the chonai. This function picks up a widespread tradition of protective gods, others being the male-female dosojin for crossroads or village entry points. The normal Jizo neighborhood shrine contains one or more figures, usually of stone, sometimes painted a bit, and almost always with a red or white apron across the front. These Jizo are usually given tea each day, or sometimes water, in the appropriate number of cups. 2 cups for 2 Jizo. They just seem to live there with the local residents. They guard the area, and in turn, they are looked after by the residents. Now, in the case which I'm introducing today, this is an extra picture which shows the special veneration of Jizo at the Jizo Bon in Kyoto, in the hottest part of the year, where the people assemble, all the local people assemble in a group, and they are led by a Buddhist priest who recites sutras in front of the Jizo. And those of you who specialize in Japanese religions will be interested to know that this priest is a member of the Jodo Shinshu denomination. Quite interesting. But that's a rather specialized point. Anyway, to return to the case I'm introducing today, if we look more closely, we see a special feature, namely a card on which there is a list of blessings or benefits. These are reminiscent of lists often found at a Shinto shrine or a Buddhist temple, but we would not usually expect to see them just here. And on the card we see the heading, 10 blessings of Jizo Bosatsu, Jizo Jippuku. And in detail, these blessings are easy childbearing, health in body and mind, warding off all illnesses, long and healthy life, sensible wisdom, a full wallet, love and respect from all, plentiful cereals and rice, divine protection, and confirmation of great enlightenment. Well, the term blessings, fukutoku, refers to the virtues of the Bodhisattva Jizo, which bring blessings to others. Most of them, these blessings are advantages which you receive through faith in Jizo. Most of them overlap with lists of this worldly benefits, genzeryaku, which are widely sought and offered by religious institutions in Japan. And you will find examples in a book called Schicksalsdeutung und Lebensgestaltung, which was written by Katja Triplett and myself, mainly, also by Monika Schrimpf. And you'll hear a bit more about this worldly benefits later. The question which arises here is why such a list is displayed in a local Jizo shrine. Whoever placed this card here will have known that there are larger Buddhist temples which celebrate Jizo-sama, and indeed one of them is mentioned on the card, where one can pray for particular blessings or benefits. And back to the list. Most of them are benefits, but notice that the last one is no less than confirmation of great enlightenment, a distinctly Buddhist idea. Let me draw attention to a second item in the same little street. A few minutes later, I caught sight of this notice on an architecturally unromantic private house. This has a different message. It's declared to be, if we look closely, a Bentenshu notice board, Bentenshu Keijiban. I should explain immediately that the ending shu, as in Bentenshu, is one way of referring to a religious denomination or tradition, especially Buddhist ones, Zen-shu, Shin-shu, Shingon-shu, etc. So Bentenshu is a bit like that, but it's the name of a new religion which began in 1934. This religion has caused little stir because it doesn't commit terrorism, so we haven't been able to employ specialists to study it. It has only been mentioned very briefly in the literature. And on this notice board, we don't in fact find notices about meetings or events, as we might expect. What we see is a list of 5 advisory precepts for practical living. The precepts, which stem from the teaching of the foundress of Bentenshu, are just the first lines of what we see here. You can see them again there, and they're actually numbered. Can I point to that with my cursor, maybe? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? So if you're tired of learning English, you can learn Japanese numerals written in Chinese script. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you will see that the first line is written slightly more boldly, and after it, there is a brief informal commentary written by hand. So we have, sincerity should never be forgotten. Comment, let us treat everybody with kindness so that we can get them to be glad. So cheer up, everybody. We should cultivate a mind of compassion and sympathy. Comment, let us meet everybody with gentleness and consideration. Third, we should build up the practices of the good roots of virtue. That's a Buddhist idea. Commentary, if we do good things, we can receive happiness from the gods, so let us do good things more and more. Fourth, we should cultivate sincere gratitude. Being grateful to everybody and for everything, let us express this in words and deeds. Fifth, we should not feel discontent or dissatisfaction. Comment, without grumbling or complaining, let us lead our lives in a spirit of serenity. Well, what more do I need to add? We could just go straight to the buffet and be happy. I think reading this, it would not be unfair to summarize the teaching of Bentenshu as being about how to live with others happily. This is its message to the world. Now, although the notice board gives us no other publicity for the religion Bentenshu, I had fortunately, oh, I'm sorry, here they are in English for you, just to remind you, okay? Quick look. I'm sorry. I wanted you to listen to me, you see. Now you can just read it. I paid a message to the headquarters some time ago. And as with many new religions, the architecture is not traditional. It's not just a Buddhist temple, but it has its own style. The main focus of devotion is a curving tower, which you see here, and this houses the divinity Benten, hence the name Bentenshu. This divinity, otherwise known as Benzaiten, is believed to have revealed the teaching to the foundress. Here she is, Omori Chiben. Benzaiten, although a goddess rather than a bodhisattva, is shown here as a tall, gilded figure, and with her many arms of compassion is reminiscent of that much-loved bodhisattva Kannon, Avalokiteshvara Kannon Sama. Moreover, both of them, like Jizo, care for aborted babies. But Benzaiten is revered in many other places in Japan, and the iconography varies. Two other typical features are that she is shown as a lute player, as on this votive tablet, and also that she is sometimes symbolized by or entangled with, this is a real life representation of Benzaiten, who is playing the lute on her birthday, or actually it's my birthday, April the 22nd, but it's the celebratory day for Benzaiten. So they have a special ceremony of playing the lute. I'm sorry, I should have said that Benzaiten is sometimes entangled with a snake divinity known as Ugajin, and I think you'll see a picture of that later on. But anyway, she is one of the 7 gods of good fortune, an extremely popular group of divinities, but as is well known, she is a Japanese version of the Indian Saraswati. And here you will see a Rinzai Zen monk attending to Benzaiten on April the 22nd. They do this each year, and I think you'll find that they are reciting the great Prajna Sutra, the Daihanya Kyo, on the Tendoku system, reciting it at speed. It's very, very long, and they do it by throwing it through the air, and this is all done to honor Benzaiten. Well, these are only a few fragments of background information about Benzaiten, whose cult is, here are a few more, sorry. Here's another example of Benzaiten at the headquarters of the new religion, Shinyoen, a different new religion. Here is a Shingon-derived monk, but an officiant of the Shinyoen religion, reciting before Benzaiten in this tower, very modern. Anyway, back now to the notice board. You see, my interest today, digging for theory, lies in what we should make of these 5 precepts. What do we notice about them? These simple themes, which I explained, are extremely obvious to Japanese people in general. Sincerity and gratitude are urged by most religious teachers and many others besides. They are common values. A little more specific are compassion and the cultivation of roots of goodness. These are Buddhist ideas. Now, the foundress of Bentenshu was in fact the wife of a Shingon Buddhist priest, so we know where she got these things from, or some of them. But we are not directed here to the teaching of a particular Buddhist school or denomination. The heading of the notice board makes it quite clear that these motifs are being promoted by Bentenshu, a new religion with its own story of revelation. The person who wrote this notice and put it on his or her house expects passers-by to understand it easily, to feel addressed, and to feel encouraged to work on these positive things in daily life. And so in this local street situation, Bentenshu is supporting a widely understood pattern of religiously oriented behavior. You can see I'm working towards my theory, and at the same time, simply by referring to Bentenshu, it is calling for more specific attention to a teaching promoted under its own name. So now I come to my 3rd example. Here is what I think is a pleasant scroll, not a work of art, but a piece of iconography which came into my hands more or less by chance at a market of household goods and antiquities, usually known as a flea market. By the way, you know that Japanese people have difficulty in distinguishing between the letter L and the letter R. And so this means that the word flea market usually comes out as free market. And I've asked quite a lot of Japanese people about this, and they all think it's a free market, namely that people can sell things freely. They don't think it's anything to do with fleas. That's just one of those things. Anyway, this is where I got the scroll, at a flea market. The further provenance is unclear. Now, this scroll depicts 3 divinities in the Shinto tradition. They are referred to collectively at the top of the scroll as Munakata Sanchu Daijin, that is the 3 great divinities of Munakata. If you look these up, you will find that Munakata is a relatively small place on the western coast of Kyushu, the most southern large island of Japan, and its Shinto shrine, Munakata Taisha, is regarded as the home of these 3 goddesses, or kami, whose names are Tagori Hime no Kami, Tagetsu Hime no Kami, and Ichikishimi Hime no Kami. The title Hime no Kami or Himegami means princess goddess. These three, who are otherwise revered in many parts of the country as protectors of routes and journeys, occur in the ancient Japanese text Kojiki, long before there were any religions in Japan, as we all know, and are regarded as daughters of Amaterasu, the sun goddess. In honor of these three divinities, there are many Munakata shrines all over the country. So, reflecting, oh, there they are, a little close-up of the three glorious divinities, also proving that Shinto divinities can be depicted. It's an old myth running around in Germany that you have Buddhist iconography, but you don't have Shinto iconography. Well, here's some Shinto iconography. So anyway, reflecting on this scroll, I decided to take a look at one of the local Munakata shrines in my own area in Kyoto, just a few minutes away in the grounds of the former imperial palace, which is now a large public park, the Gyoen. The Munakata shrine here is a branch shrine owing allegiance to the main general shrine at Munakata city. It is said to have been founded in the year 795 by order of the Emperor Kanmu, just 1 year after the capital was moved from Nara to Kyoto. Here's the entrance, the name of the shrine, and there's the main place of worship. And the three divinities were called from the province of Chikushi. They were called. Okay, they were called, it wouldn't be Rufen, from the province of Chikushi, now Fukuoka Prefecture in Kyushu. But here in Kyoto, they are revered together in one place. So this shrine is part of a bigger story. I just started with this scroll all by itself, but it's part of a bigger story, one which links up with the wider story of the whole of Japan and the emperor tradition or system. At the same time, it situates itself by means of various incidental features in the daily consciousness of those who visit it. Of course, the scroll doesn't tell you about these incidental things, so we are left to work it out. And I want to draw attention to three of these incidental features at the shrine. The first is that there are special trees in the grounds of the shrine. One of them is a luster leaf holly. It's got very characteristic firm leaves, which can be used for writing on. And the Indian name for this tree, which I'm afraid I've forgotten, is supposed to be the origin of the Japanese word for postcard, hagaki, which has the literal meaning of leaf writing. You might say that this has nothing to do with religion, neither today nor in 795. That is more or less correct. A lot of things in Shinto have nothing to do with religion, you might think, but the connection with religion is that this tree is mentioned as one of the interesting features of the shrine. Part of the attractiveness of Shinto shrines is that they all have little interesting features which give them a particular history and character. The celebration of these is part of the nature of the Shinto tradition. A second tree, given particular prominence, is said to be the largest camphor tree in the imperial palace gardens. And this tree also stands within the demarcated sacred space of the shrine. This is the outer wall, and it's further designated as sacred because of its age, sufficiently sacred to have been given its own symbolic rope or shimenawa encircling its sacrality. The sacralization of trees in such a way can be seen all over Japan and contributes to the sense that any one place is a power spot. A second interesting incidental feature, because of the role of the Munakata divinities as protectors of routes and journeys, is that there is a special sub-shrine devoted to the concerns of tourism. The concept of tourism is, of course, a modern one, and it does not go back to the year 795. Rather, it reflects one of the main businesses of modern Kyoto, tourism, in which the grounds of the former palace play a part. I don't know when this sub-shrine was set up, but it was presumably after the imperial palace moved to the new eastern capital in Kyoto. Here are the lanterns for the Kyoto Kanko Jijan. A third feature of this Munakata shrine is that it provides the usual service of votive tablets, or ema. I've been showing you some of these, for the expression of wishes and prayers by visitors. Such this worldly blessings stand, this first picture is not from this shrine, it's from Kofukuji. That's a Buddhist temple. I nearly made a mistake there, but I put it there on purpose because it's the year of the snake. So in 2013, it's the year of the snake, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the ema from Kofukuji. Now have a look at this one from Munakata Shrine, and you'll see that in this one, we have not only the snake, but it's wrapped around the lute, which is the symbol of benzaiten. So it all fits together, doesn't it? So we see that Buddhist-oriented arrangements establish a connection with this worldly benefits through their ema and the wider practice of using votive tablets, which was originally a Shinto custom. The Shinto Munakata Shrine, in turn, is establishing a connection back to the cult of benzaiten, which developed in the context of Buddhism. At the same time, the new religion Benten Shu, you will remember, made use of benzaiten as a source of revelation and offers a commendation of attitudes which most people in Japan agree to be a good thing. So in various ways, all of these materials are reinforcing a generally comprehensible pattern of symbols and behavior. Now, these are just 3 stray examples which I happen to come across recently, but it's this generally comprehensible pattern of symbols and behavior which lie behind them, which I seek to grasp theoretically. So where is the theory? The question is, how do these things and many others like them fit together? Or as a student in England once asked me during lectures on Buddhism, why are you telling us this? So what is the analytical theory which helps us to coordinate these matters? We need to distinguish between analytical theory and explanatory theory. The latter comes into play, for example, in discussing historical sequences and changes after the analytical theory is in place. But first, we need an analytical theoretical grasp. It's not good enough just to say, that these are all examples of folk religion or popular religion, etc. These terms have no explanatory value whatever. They are worthless. They remind me of the ritual vessel label, which is often seen in museums, stuck on when curators have no idea of what the vessel is for. Well, it is possible and worthwhile to attend to intermediate theoretical constructs, and as some of you may know, I've made a bit of an effort to achieve precision over some terms such as pilgrimage and syncretism, and I've also tried to establish new ones such as abbreviation, adjacency, calendaricity, and so on. 3 quick pictures on abbreviation. This is an abbreviated pilgrimage of 88 temples, all in one place. Some of you have seen it. You just visit each stone. I've got the titles mixed up. This one is the miniature Mount Fuji, which means you don't have to actually go up Mount Fuji, and the other one is the miniature pilgrimage, okay? And the third one is the ultimate abbreviation, an electronic shrine to pray for academic success in your computer. You don't need to go anywhere else. But above and beyond such intermediate terms, we also need some wider terms. We need major organizing concepts. And by now, based on my observations, I find that 3 are particularly valuable. Namely, and some of you have heard this before, primal religion, civil religion, and critical religion. In brief, primal religion is dominant. That's what we've been looking at so far, mostly, while civil religion and critical religion arise in a special relationship to it, in a mixed pattern of affirmation and critique. And I hope this will soon become clear. So next, I want to give you, that's the briefest part. So now I come to the summary view of primal religion in Japan. My former students will already be bored with this, but still, just a few illustrations. I'm not really digging for theory anymore about this because I already did it. These are features of the pattern which has emerged over many years of observation. And I do use a number of keywords in Japanese here are some Japanese words transliterated, but please note that these themselves are not analytical concepts. These are suggestive in character for those who know the language, so they know what I'm talking about, but they're not themselves analytical concepts. The analytical concepts which we need in the study of religions have to be abstracted concepts which we define for our purposes, not just naming phenomena with amic terminology. There is a much greater variety of vocabulary in actual use, so these are just convenient pegs. I start with sacred space, and here I'll just show a few pictures of features which help you to understand where the sacred space is. And the suggestive keyword is omairi, which means proceeding humbly to a holy place. The whole country, Japan is a very secular country, but nevertheless, the whole country is provided with innumerable foci for transactional rituals to which it is appropriate to proceed on various occasions. Shinto shrines, Buddhist temples, and other special spots such as imperial mausolea, other mausolea, the founders of new religions have their mausolea, or natural phenomena. And although these foci are very varied, the idea of proceeding there for an act of reverence is shared. You just do omairi. You may do it with a clap, or you may do it with a gasho. Now, the performance of omairi is usually an individual or a family act, but it also takes place in the context of broadly based social festivals and also of personal devotions in the context of new religions, for example. I'm just going to quickly show you 10 pictures which show you the focusing of sacred space. There's a straightforward Shinto shrine. You can see how you are led towards the shrine. Here's the Shinto-style gateway before a Buddhist temple, Tennoji, near Osaka. You see the proximity of the religions. Here is an area which is set aside for purifying the cars, which are all waiting to be purified. This is somewhere in Dewa Sanzan, in northern Japan. And also in Dewa Sanzan, you can see here a major gateway showing the approach to the Holy of Holies, which is in the mountain. And what does that look like? It looks like this. This is the most sacred spot, also encircled with appropriate string and white papers. By the way, you're not really supposed to photograph this one. Not when you're close to it. And that's why I climbed up the mountain to get a picture from a long way away. I hope nobody minds. The rope is also used, the shimenawa, in front of Buddhist temples as well as Shinto shrines, or house altars, or indeed anything. And you can see here that on Hakusan, which is another major mountain, you can see that the whole of the upper part of the mountain is described as being the keidai, the sacred precincts of the shrine, which is at the top of the mountain. So you are entering holy ground when you get that far. Well, I think that's the last one. Yes, I'll just leave that for a minute. As far as omairi is concerned, the distinction between shrines and temples is more or less irrelevant. There are supposed to be different forms of reverence, clapping or gasho, but sometimes people mix them up. And the term is also used in many new religions. But all such details, there are more details, but they fade into insignificance beside the fact that the simple act of going to a place where reverence is due, however briefly and however short the stepping forward may be, recognizes a focus of sacred space, and everybody in Japan knows this. There is hardly a place in Japan which is without some such focus, even though it may be very small, squashed in between big commercial buildings, or even at the top of a building block or something. Well, as regards time, the most prominent keyword is Nengyu Gyoji, which is conventionally translated as annual events or annual customs. But the literal meaning would be brought out better as practices performed in the course of a year. It's actually of Chinese origin, this phrase. But these regular events are listed in endless variation because each religious organization provides its own version of them, accentuating its own interests. At the same time, people know that the list in any one shrine or temple is just a version of something which is generic and shared by all. And many of the key dates are shared in common. For example, New Year is obligatory. And so the terms Nenju Gyoji, or sometimes Nenkan Gyoji, imply a conceptual and ritual structuring of the year. And I like to call the consciousness shaped in this way calendricity, perhaps better still recurrent calendricity, because each new year is expected to succeed the last in a more or less similar way. A few quick pictures of this. Waiting for sunrise, January the 1st. Hanamatsuri is the so-called flower festival. This is a Buddhist festival, April the 8th, celebrating the birth of the Buddha. They're anointing the baby Buddha with amazake. This is the girls' festival where they set up the dolls, Hinamatsuri. This is the dancing with the ancestors at Obon in midsummer. And back to Jizobon, which I mentioned before, you see how one thing interlocks, one pattern interlocks with another pattern. These patterns all interlock. It's impossible to set it out in one short lecture. Father Christmas. Christmas is getting big in Japan nowadays. So there's Father Christmas looking astonishingly like one of the 7 gods of good fortune. And then the monks of Pure Land Buddhism banging the gong at Chion on New Year's Eve. And back to New Year. Posters advertising New Year's visits at the shrines. Now, these patterns are not usually regarded as religious or shukyo-teiki. Being religious or doing something religious is thought to be more specific and more individualistically intentional. But you see, this very attitude of rejecting the concept of religion is itself typical of primal religion. That's part of my argument. Primal religion is coterminous with ordinary life in which all participate as a matter of normality. So now there are 2 further terms which provide us with social and individual trajectories. We have corporate festivals or social rituals. The key word here is matsuri. Here's just a shot of a summer matsuri. And this is especially current in Shinto context, but not only. So, as I mentioned, the Buddhist flower festival, Hana Matsuri, on April the 8th, is also a matsuri. So you've got the idea of matsuri running through the whole thing. And here we have a poster for the summer festival, the Natsu Matsuri, borrowing it, you see, in the context of Enno-kyo, another much understudied religion, which my wife discovered when I was trying to have a holiday. She said, "What's that religion?" So I had to go and study that. Anyway, there is their poster for the summer festival, Matsuri. And the idea of Matsuri links the ritual activities of one year with its previous year, but socially. And it implies a kind of renewal brought about by the annual repetition. I think I have to jump a little bit. So then we come to the 4th feature, which is the ritual activity focused on the individual. And this follows, first, and on the one hand, jinsei girei, which typically occur in any one individual life, from the first shrine visit, which we see here, of a new baby, through adolescent rites and marriage to death. The adolescent rites, well, these are actually younger. This is about shrine visits for children aged 7, 5, and 3, commercially advertised. And here they're actually doing it, a good family which happened to have a child of 7, 5, and 3, which is really good. Usually don't have enough children. And then you come to the wedding groups. Of course, you go through life just as we do, and in the end, you care for the ancestors, and in fact, you become an ancestor. And here is the hanging scroll showing the ancestors of a family named Suzuki with Buddhist names on lotus flowers. So the ancestors continue to be part of the family. I should show you a picture of a Buddhist house altar where people report things to the ancestors, not least the arrival and naming of a new baby, leading into the new sequence of individual life rights. And the reason for highlighting ancestor veneration, even more than life rights, really, is that it includes comprehensively both the living and the dead. We are all part of a sequence in this great procession of life rights. And then finally, we come to the rights of transaction, which are carried out in the perspective of all of these four coordinates. No single term sums it up adequately. I like to call them rights of transaction. The suggestive keyword here is genzeriaku. And this refers to potentially dozens of different benefits which may be expected to arise as a result of ritual transactions involving giving and receiving. And it reminds us that the primal religion is concerned with what happens to ordinary people in daily life in this world, rather than offering any further perspectives on the meaning of human life, the destiny of souls, and so on, as is typical of the more specific or critical religious teachings or practice. At the same time, unlike civil religion, I should say, primal religion does offer alleviation of suffering and a promise of welfare in daily existence. And almost all Japanese religious institutions feed into this provision. This can be seen from the fact that one can get a guide in some cities which tells which temple or shrine to visit for particular needs: traffic and safety, getting a partner, success in examinations, etc. And yet there is more to transaction than just buying this worldly benefits, getting them from deities in exchange for donations. There is also a transactional relationship between the generations. The living once depended on those who are now ancestors, and so they show them gratitude at the house altars, give them tea, other food, and the same living people are supposed to accept responsibility for the coming generation, those who will eventually be looking after them as ancestors. Now, this is a largely unspoken assumption which underlies much ritual activity, regardless of special religious affiliation. You can read about that in the book, which I mentioned just now. Here are just one or two of the daily phenomena in shrines and temples: the fortune-telling slips, the amulets, these are also amulets, really, called, well, they're called taima, but otherwise ofuda is the generic term. Traffic protection amulet, etc., things like that. So that's basically my summary view of Japanese primal religion, very brief. 4 main fields: sacralized time, sacralized space, socially integrative festivals, and personal life rights, including ancestor veneration. And these are held together by the glue of transactions. Well, I don't think this simple pattern is unique to Japan, but in Japan it is readily discernible. And it's taken more or less for granted by the great majority of people. It's not really possible to get away from it. On the other hand, it's not necessary for the participants to think about it very much. And there is no official name for this theoretical construct, primal religion. You will not find it in any list of religions kept by the government. Es ist ein religionswissenschaftlicher Begriff. It's a concept in the study of religions, nothing more, but nothing less. So now I have to have just a few words on the relations between primal, civil, and critical. This is quite brief. Firstly, primal religion has a definition like this. People are expected to participate in it. Shinto is an intermediate case because Shinto would like to be the primal religion of Japan, but it no longer is, not in toto, because it's very heavily organized, very highly organized, and so it has rather left the field. It has left open the field which I refer to as primal religion. So Shinto has its feet in primal religion, and yet it is more than primal religion. It has its own distinctive self. Now, the concept of civil religion will be familiar to all of you. It's been in wide use in other parts of the world, France, North America, and I've also reflected on it with reference to places such as Finland, Germany, and Mexico. But what's usually unnoticed is that civil religion, it's an additional pattern below primal religion or above primal religion, but it's created from two directions. This is often overlooked, from the secular direction and the religious direction. And this can easily be observed in Japan, for example, in the case of the war memorializing Yasukuni Shrine. But basically, civil religion is shaped by the same parameters as primal religion. Space is sacralized, as in the Japanese concept of kokutai, literally the national body, the ideologized land. Moreover, the ancestors are crucial in Japan as elsewhere in civil religion. Think of Westminster Abbey in England or the Pantheon in France. Well, the main difference between primal religion and civil religion is that civil religion does not provide any soteriology at all. There is no soteriology. Primal religion provides inner worldly soteriologies in the form of this worldly benefits, which are often problem-solving. However, primal religion does not provide transcendental soteriology that takes you out of this world, critical of the general run of society or human existence. So by contrast with both primal and civil religion, we also find all the various specific religious teachings and institutions listed by the Japanese government, most of them, most of which have a far more widely reaching perspective in terms of the cultivation of personal spirituality or other kinds of soteriology. And I sum these up in the third category, which I call critical religion. It's simply intended to imply that there is a special, thoughtful stance of some kind which is not completely satisfied with primal religion. For this, you might say, why not call it soteriological religions? Well, this doesn't really quite work because there is certainly such a thing as inner worldly soteriology, which you have in primal religious contexts. And moreover, not all religions like to think of themselves as centered around a soter or savior. Critical religions are characteristically optional or voluntary, as in the term voluntarism, while primal religion and civil religion thrive on social pressure, which is often quite obligatory. And so in particular situations, historical situations, there are often clashes between the claims of primal or civil religion and the claims or insights of critical religion. On the other hand, the specific religions are set in many ways in the pattern of primal religion, as we saw with Benten Shu. You can follow that through with practically all the specific religions to see how they sit in the general pattern of primal religion. If they were to avoid this completely, they would become incomprehensible. For example, you can't subtract the ancestor dimension from most forms of Buddhism in Japan. And indeed, you can hardly subtract it entirely from Japanese Christianity, in spite of the wariness of some theologians. Well, talking of Christianity, the various ways in which Christianity relates to the primal pattern are in fact quite interesting. For example, in churches in Japan, we will not usually hear prayers for success in examinations or commercial success, which are this worldly benefits, but we will find prayers for our daily bread, for healing, and for safety in travel, which are also this worldly benefits. So, where does this analytical theory take us? What is the point of it? I want to give, just got a few more minutes. Actually, I started a little bit later than 6 o'clock. I started at 7 o'clock, didn't I? So, but anyway, I haven't got so much further to go. Where does it take us? Well, three things. Firstly, it helps us to understand particular problem areas better. The distinction between civil religion and primal religion is very important for understanding particular issues in Japan relating to religion, e.g. the Yasukuni Shrine problem, which most of you have heard about. Although it's not stated in these terms, the shrine authorities and leading right-wing politicians would like Yasukuni Shrine to be a national monument. They would like it to be, in effect, an element in Japan's civil religion. as it was in pre-war times, and in a sense still is. The shrine business of amulets and so on is relatively modest compared with the high public prominence of the site and its distinguished visitors, including politicians. On the other hand, the element of the prematurely dead being honored and settled down among the ancestors is deeply rooted in the primal religion. Now, the same may be said for the less well-known memorial to those who lost their lives in the 1923 Kanto earthquake, the great Kanto earthquake of 1923. And there is a wonderful memorial here, there, about that in Tokyo, near the main sumo wrestling hall, of which the architecture and the internal arrangements combine Shinto and Buddhist elements. It's a monument of civil religion. It provides no this-worldly benefits, and yet it works as civil religion for the same reason as Yasukuni Shrine, namely that it lays to rest the spirits of the prematurely dead. Now, secondly, the kind of theories I'm advancing help us to approach the analysis of Japanese religion in historical periods with greater confidence and interest. For example, the phenomenon known as the Oise Mairi, Ise pilgrimage, you see the term Mairi coming in here, but it's a special term, Oise Mairi, which excited mass pilgrimages to the centrally important Ise Shrine in the 18th and 19th centuries, was partly an aspect of the increasing prominence of Ise Shrine as a focus of Shinto across the country, reflecting the general resurgence of Shinto ideology already in early modern times, not only with the Meiji Restoration. But it was partly so popular because it was set in the language of the primal religion then current, which also offered this worldly benefits then as now, freely and somehow miraculously. These are details now of the woodblock print. You can see in this the protective and wealth-bringing amulets fluttering down from the sky. Now, the style of these pilgrimages was very different from that of the well-organized group visits to Ise, which you get today. And so this, in turn, raises the question as to how the high narrative version of Ise Jingu, Ise Shrine, is related to the primal religion of today. And you can approach that question by distinguishing between Shinto as an adjusted primal religion, which has become modernized and institutionalized, and the de facto primal religion of Japan today, in which formally organized Shinto, like the other religions, is set. As I said before, Shinto is no longer the primal religion of Japan, and if it ever was precisely that, such a status is now lost in the mists of history. So these concepts can help us to organize our understanding of different historical periods. And my contention, actually, is that there has been a primal religion in Japan going back for quite a long time. You can find most of the elements of it in the Sutra of Golden Light, as a matter of fact, which was a very popular sutra in the early period of Japanese history. So third, a stable analytic pattern also helps us to say in what sense the majority of the contemporary population of Japan is religious, when this is often denied by non-specialists and even by specialists, arguing, it's often denied by Japanologists who know nothing about the study of religions. And they argue on the basis of inadequate perceptions of terminological relevance. So I just want to illustrate this point with a generically simplified conversation based on field experience. It's a conversation between a Japanese man and myself. It could be this gentleman here. Actually, it wasn't him, but he is a Japanese man. So a Japanese man would then approach me, and he would say to me, "How long have you been in Japan? Why can you speak Japanese?" So I give a brief explanation of how it is that I'm in Japan and how I can speak Japanese. "What is your profession?" "I study religions." "Which religions? Christianity?" "Well, various religions, but in particular Japanese religions. Japanese people are mostly not religious. In other words, you're wasting your time. For example, I am not religious." Oh, what do you do at New Year?" "Oh, I take a holiday and rest at home." "Do you have special food?" "Oh, yes, we do." "Do you know ozoni, Japanese soup?" "Oh, yes, I heard about it." "Do you visit a shrine or temple?" "Oh, yes, with the family." Where do you go? Oh, for example, to a shrine like Ebisu-sama, or just a shrine near our house, or to a famous temple. A Buddhist one? Yes, Buddhist. Oh, what do you do there? We just pray for good health and so on in the coming year. Oh, do you spend any money? Do you buy anything? Oh, well, yes, usually an amulet for the family, just for good luck. Where do you put it? On a shelf in the kitchen. Oh, thank you for telling me. So this man is trying to tell me that what he does is not religion, while what I'm saying as a specialist in the study of religions is that, regardless of all the ways in which the word religion and its equivalents and translations have been used at various times, this very definitely is a case of religion falling into the category which I designate as primal religion. Okay, here I stand. His attitude shows an unquestioning acceptance of the regular routines and does not move into the area of any more specific religious orientation with some kind of specialized leadership or teaching. These are the kinds of things he would buy. So now I come to my general conclusions. Can I just conclude, Katya, time-wise? Is it okay? Yeah, please let me conclude, somehow. I want to return to the wider issues, and I began by showing some impatience with the influence of those more famous sociological or anthropological theories which are dragged in from above and not from the ground. On the other hand, there have, of course, been well-known writers on religion, usually classed as anthropologists, whose theoretical perceptions have developed at least in part from further, rather specific observations. Sorry, my English is getting muddled up. Their theoretical perceptions have developed at least in part from specific observations. One thinks of Durkheim, Westermarck, Evans Pritchard, Firth, Spiro, and others. Well, it may be a surprise to hear the name of Durkheim here, but just recently it has been emphasized by Jens Kreinert in an article in Visual Anthropology that Durkheim made considerable use of the photographic evidence in Spencer and Gillen's account of Aboriginal religion. This enabled him to develop his theory by focusing on ritual, which had been observed, rather than on oral reports of cosmology or mythical narratives. And so, although others did the digging by delivering the photographs, Durkheim turned it into digging for theory, we might say. Or recall the work of Edvard Westermarck, may be known to some of you. He was fascinated by anything and everything which in Morocco counted as in some sense sacred, ... baraka, including plants, animals, stones, holy wells, cairns marking the approach to the graves of the saints, the deceased saints themselves, and even some living human beings such as his long-life travel companion, I can't pronounce his name, Abdesalam el-Bakali, whose family was believed to be related by descent to the Prophet himself, peace be upon him. We know that his understanding, Westermarck's understanding, of the relation between the mosque-based Islam of the Quran and the religious culture of Baraka, regarded by Westermarck as a resilient form of animism, not a term I take up, but apparently spreading through the parameters of what I do call primal religion, was based on direct observations. And we know this not least because of very extensive photographic evidence, now held in the library of Åbo Akademi, and selectively published a few years ago by Suolinna, Hellström, and Lahtinen. So this is another early example of the use of the camera in field work. It seems that the quality of the photographs is varied. For example, people not infrequently lose their heads in horizontal shots. However, they lose their heads. I know, I'll show you a picture. This is a picture of the headquarters of the new religion Shinyoen, which I mentioned before. Note the Buddhist wheel above, and note also this cheerful guide who has lost her legs. So this is an example of a photograph where the person has lost her legs. And in the case of Westermarck, people sometimes lost their heads. But it seems, I suspected that the photographs illustrating aspects of Baraka would only make sense as a group insofar as the theoretical framework or Leitgedanke is known. But it seems likely that Westermarck arrived at his theoretical perceptions by means of digging around among the phenomena which interested him. So, why don't we just get on with our work? We don't have to become anthropologists instead. Well, perhaps we are anthropologists. I was once told I'm an anthropologist, and then next time I met the person, he said, your anthropology is out of date. So I don't know where that leaves me. I don't think of myself as an anthropologist. I just get on with my work. What I wish to emphasize is that we who study religions can and should proceed from observation to theory. And I've tried to show you how it is done. I've only given a few examples. Spending a lot of time in Japan, I constantly come across similar bits and pieces of evidence, and that's part of the fascination of it. And what has happened over the years is that these have developed into a theoretical pattern, and this helps me to explicate more or less any new examples as I come across them. If I walk out of the house, I can walk down the road, and I can fit it into the emerging pattern. Remember, I'm talking about analytical theory. When it comes to explanatory theory, more far-reaching considerations are needed. Analytical theory comes first and does not seek to explain the pattern in terms of something else. The point of the analytical theory in the study of religions is that it enables us quite rapidly to correlate numerous elements in the overall pattern. It will always be open to wise sociologists, all-seeing and omniscient, to attempt overall explanations. And they are very welcome to compete with the temptations of cognitive science, which makes sociology more or less redundant. So I come now to a coda. When we go out into the field, we could start all over again. I just want to show you one more example from Japan. I have here in my pocket, a small amulet, a protective amulet, which comes from Eiheiji, which is the Daihonzan of Soto Zen Buddhism. So you have Soto Zen Buddhism giving us a protective amulet, which I carry in my pocket. Well, I don't normally carry it in my pocket, but I put it in my pocket today so that I could pull it out of my pocket just at the end of the lecture. Here it is. Here's the amulet. I've jumped. I didn't want to have too many pictures, so I'll have to take it out of its pack. Normally you don't take an amulet out of its plastic pack, but I'm going to do this in your presence because, you see, I'm digging for theory and I'm very curious to know just what's in here. And what I've got is a lovely little sutra. Can you see the sutra? Well, for the benefit of those who may be watching later, the sutra is already open. You can see it's a folding sutra book, just like the ones that you have in Buddhist temples. And it's described as Omamori Shingyo Kannongyo. That's what it says here, the full title. Omamori Shingyo Kannongyo. Shingyo means the Heart Sutra, a very short sutra, and Kannongyo is the Kannon Sutra. Both of these are very popular. Now, taken together, these texts have nothing to do with zazen or meditation. They have a lot to do with the salvific power of the Bodhisattva Kannon and with the idea of Buddhist enlightenment in the sense of freedom through total detachment to details, from details. So I think this will be a very good moment to release you all from listening to me. Thank you very much.